it out. But for 4 new people coming in and all these campuses, that snapshot's going to be really important.
I think there are lots of good reasons that can be of value.
Yes, great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, board members. Before we go any further, the cameraman is all but flagging me down here. He needs to do a change right there. Are you good to go? You already changed it? Okay, then. So anyway.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to comment to Ms. Blackwelder's point that the school improvement plan facilities request were in the back of the school, or I say the facilities requests were back in the school improvement plans. I actually like that they're separated and we're focusing the school improvement plans truly on school improvement because it was hard to find the exact page in every school improvement plan and pull it out for us to look at. That used to be a target. I know we always used to search down through there and find out what they put in. And every year those were pulled out by facilities and maintenance department into those separate lists that we get with the budget with the yellow priorities and what we can include in the roofs and all that business. They'd be pulled out in there as well. So it's not, so the public understands, it's not that we've ignored this, it's just been in different places. And now it's going to be in a single consolidated place separate from the academic growth plans. So.
Absolutely, and that was one of the concerns that I had too when I looked at the school improvement plans too was, we didn't have this list that we used to have that Ms. Furtenbaugh and Ms. Blackwater was talking about. I remember seeing the list years ago and it sort of disappeared over time. So we need to definitely get that back in. Mr. Kiger, you have your comments or questions ready.
Thank you. I didn't realize anybody from Harris Road was here. You guys seem to know that, but that was the one thing that jumped out at me on the sheet is that there's nothing from that school, and I guess it's a finite list that we're trying to organize, but that's one we've heard about repeatedly. So it's all of these things. There's a lot of things needed. So, but that was the one thing that jumped out to me. The other one is, and I've been involved. I think it was a year ago in December. We got a presentation from a couple different energy groups, and that's when we first met EduCon, and we were talking about this. And we did talk about changing out light fixtures at an entire elementary school and what that might cost. I don't ever remember a conversation about replacing all of the gym fixtures, and there's just something that rubs me the wrong way of going to Hickory Ridge Middle School that's only been open 2 years and changing out all the light fixtures for a cost of $40,000. So that piece, I guess, is what, $663,000. That's a worthy goal to try to do. I guess what I'd like to see is some sort of evidence or a pro forma or something that shows if we do that, here's what what are we going to, what kind of return of investment are we going to have for that? Because physical needs, there's a lot we could do for 663. I guess for me to be able to support the list as is, I'd like to see that. Okay. I'm not saying I wouldn't support it, but it just seems like that's one area that maybe we either postpone or we do something else or decide to do something else on. That's just my personal opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Kiger. Ms. Minot.
I'd just like to add to what Blake just said. I think that you do need some sort of return on investment there to show you how long is it going to take to make up the difference there on the savings on those issues. And the other one may not even be in this discussion, I'm not sure, but I did, in a conversation with Dr. Shepard this past week or so, and I noticed that the Glenn Center is on the list for renovation. We talked about the fact that there might be a need now for it to look a little bit harder at the building itself to see whether or not it's a feasible project, and that would possibly take some funds to hire the necessary people. I don't know whether it belongs here, but the question is, if it doesn't belong here, where is it? Where could we get some funds to take a harder look at that building to see whether reconstruction or even just, let's say, taking the auditorium and getting the public to do the auditorium first. You can't start anything on that project, even to speculate with that project. And it's possible that it could help with some of the issues that we've heard tonight about moving children and disturbing children and so forth as you do in some of these other projects. So that was just my question. Where would we find some funds for that?
Thank you, Ms. Minot. That seems to always be the big question. Where do we find funds for this and find funds for that? And with what Ms. Minot said, talking about the Glenn Center, as all of the board members know and the staff have known, that we've received a lot of response from the J.M. Robinson parents, as Mr. Furr mentioned, about the field houses and potential this and potential that. And the need is just so great. I mean, we presented with the commissioners a couple of months ago, as Dave had mentioned, $180+ million worth of what we refer to as critical needs, not a wish list, but critical needs. And as the school system grows and as the children population grows, then everything else grows with it. The maintenance needs, the schoolers get older, even the new schools that Ms. Minot was referring to, Weddington, well, that school's 20 years old now. 1992, I believe, is when you said.
94, something like that.
In the early 90s,
94,
mid-90s. So, they're getting old. And, you can't, hypothetically, if you've got, and we were talking about this just today, if you've got $5 million annually coming in because of maintenance requirements, maintenance requests, and that kind of thing, and you only get $2 or $3 million to work with, well, you just added from 187 to 188, 189 million, and what happens is that list just keeps growing and growing and growing, and that's another reason why the chair and vice chair of the county, and also this board, myself and Mr. Kiger, along with the county manager and the superintendent, are talking, and trying to come up with some way to implement some type of a plan that we can start addressing all of these needs. And it's hard, for us as a board to put a field house, that type thing, which we know, there's no doubt they're needed. But there's a lot of things that's needed. And I think of, the things that Miss Yuji, she comes here faithfully, represent Harris Road Middle School. They've got a lot of needs out there, and it's a much newer school than the Weddington Hills. But the needs are there, and if there was a way that we could find the funding when these schools is built to cover all of these different things, which we've come up with, thanks to Miss Blackwelder and some others that have come up with building standards for the schools, for these schools include all of these things from the get-go, and but there's just no way when it's literally thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of intricate parts that go into building and designing a school. And so, but you're supposed to learn by experience, but to say all of that, to come down with, the county has said they would have somewhere in the neighborhood of $5 million in surplus funds for the 2011-2012 budget. Well, my understanding is they have already designated close to $1 million or so to the Kannapolis City School District, and they've made some other type commitments, I believe, and they wanted to know where our list was. Well, our list has been here. We just didn't have it in the right order that they wanted it. However, land has always been an issue for us, at least for the last year, since Cox Mill and Odell has got in the situation that they're in. So it has to be a priority for us above everything. But to address Ms. Minot's question on the Glenn Center, I think that's something that a lot of people would like to see. I would like to see that happen as well. But to be perfectly honest with you, as the viewing audience and for my fellow board members here, I personally, I like the idea. Dr. Shepard, I think it was your idea originally. I believe it came from you as far as using the old Glenn Center as a place to house children, while a school such as Royal Oaks or Coltrane Webb or whatever school we need to renovate or replace or whatever, be a place to house those. But in all honesty, though, in my opinion, and I think there might be another board member or two that would share this, it would not be conducive to bring children from Cox Mill to City of Concord to Glenn Center, or from Odell to City of Concord to the Glenn Center as a temporary housing. Now, that's just my opinion. Other board members may share that. But that's open for other discussions, that type thing. What we're concerned about now, and this is what the motion is going to be, is that we accept this capital funds request so the commissioners can get busy trying to figure out what they will or what they can fund, because ultimately it's going to be their decision. Now, if I'm wrong, somebody correct me. Okay?
Now, Mr. Chairman, I would like to see, though, just suggestion kind of following on what some other board members have said. Any non-essential, like the energy, are nice to-dos, but they're non-essential to daily function of the school. anything that is in a 5-year or newer school should not be on that list for fixture replacement. I mean, that's just unacceptable. So I know it's nice to try to think of that, but to me, that's a bit embarrassing to go to the commissioners with that on the list. So I'd like to see that taken off. And 5 years may not be the right mark, Blake, if you want to recommend a number of years or age of the school, but I don't want to see that on there.
Yeah, I guess I'd rather base. Oh, there we go. I guess I would rather base it on what the lighting needs are in that current gym. Is it currently acceptable? Well, whether it's 8 years old or 10 years old or 5 years old, if it's acceptable, now's not the time. I just don't think now's the time to be doing that. If it's gotten to the point where it's only 6 years old, but for some reason they were bad fixtures and the lights, whatever reason, well, then we can address it. But to me, it would just not necessarily be a drawn line in the sand for the year, but based on the actual need of the lighting in that particular facility. I don't know how you put that in the motion, but
Well, and I agree, and maybe we just take,
I'd just take that. Yeah, I would be okay if we take that one on.
Please, mic up, Ms. Furtenbaugh.
I'm sorry. And Mr. Chair, as the board, we probably everyone remembers that the commissioners were very interested in the Mount Pleasant High School mechanical. And so from that standpoint, does that need to be higher than 6? Because we know they were interested. I mean, I don't think they're going to get beyond purchasing the land and letting us start a school design. But just from a priority standpoint, there has been some verbal discussion about the interest in doing those. So.
I agree with you, Mr. Kiger and Ms. Furtenbaugh. I think they did an excellent job in listing these things out. It seemed like it was things that definitely at some point need to be done. But I concur with, if we just built like Winkler, for example, that school's just been open, this is the second year, and here we're going to spend that kind of money replacing light fixtures and things when there's so many other needs out there. So I would like to see this list revamped and exclude, the lighting fixtures for buildings, say 5, 6, whatever the board desires. But for the time being, though, to move this conversation on, are there any other changes other than placing the land is the top priority? Are there any other changes that the board would like to see? Because I'm going to recommend, obviously, this goes to the action agenda for next week, and we'll expect to see those changes in a reprioritized order.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one quick question.
Yes, Ms. Blackwell.
And you may not have this answer tonight, but if you could get it for us. I was thinking that we had a couple of other schools that I don't see listed on here that needed cameras. There was some
You have
security.
many schools that need cameras.
But there was a couple that we had a higher incidence of break-ins and some things that were going on. I can't remember what schools they were, but
I'll have to look
they
into
don't
it.
ring a bell for these that we've had any real big issues. I mean, these, I know for the obvious reasons, need to be there. But I was thinking some of the elementary schools that had some real issues.
Okay.
Maybe we need to take a look at that. If we're going to, stay with the priority of security, I would, and we'll have to do those at some point in time. I don't remember if they needed to be upgraded or actually installed new, but I'd like to have that question answered, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blackwell. And just another comment for whatever it's worth. As I mentioned to you, the Kannapolis City Schools got $1 million, and if they get 15% of what we're supposed to get, then we should get a whole lot more. And that's why ours was $7 million. But obviously you got $5 million, and $1 million's already gone, so you only got just a couple $1 million to work with there. And the needs, as Ms. Furtenbaugh said, the land will probably consume whatever we get, and basically we've known that. But just in case they can find more or can find a way to do more than just the land, then these other things will fall right into priority. So before we move on, so I want to make sure that we give clear directions today for the action agenda for next week. Is everybody clear? Make sure we're on the right page. We're taking off the things that are absolutely not critical that we have to do, and the light fixtures for sure, and maybe, I don't know, the security for the cameras, that type thing. I don't know. Do you want to leave those things on there? You wanna leave
Mr.
the
Chair, I
cameras?
would be okay if the only thing we were completely remove is the energy line items. We leave the cameras, we leave the other things in the prioritized list that we have. I would be okay if we just take off the energy subcategory.
Dave to address that for you.
Yeah,
Yeah, Dave.
Sure.
Sure, thank you. As far as the energy, a light bulb, a metal halide light bulb for a gymnasium is $23 to replace. As you can imagine, that's a very costly light fixture, and that is why the maintenance department was seeking to replace that type of fixture. That light fixture also takes 5 to 15 minutes to light at gymnasium. So if you do have a power failure, those lights are out, and unless you have an alternate light source in that gym, it's dark, and it'll take 5 to 15 minutes for those lights to light up. So lighting has changed and has evolved over the recent years. The T8s are very nice fixtures. The T5s are very nice fixtures. The T5s do work in this application. So I certainly understand, a school that's 2 years old, and if you want that removed, I certainly understand that. I would recommend, and I would hope that you would not remove, the entire line item. I do think you will be saving money. When you invest in light, in this case lighting, that is something that you get paid back, and it's a relatively short payback. So it really won't be costing you money in a couple of years. It'll be free. In fact, you'll be saving money from that point on. I'd also like to say, as far as the security cameras, we do need to look at what our standards are and things like that. I don't pretend to know them. Do you want to say something? Or do you have?
I don't care to say anything.
Oh, okay.
We do have
I'm sorry.
standards, though. John and I are looking at each other going, oh, yes, we do.
Okay, so that is something I'm not familiar with, so I can't speak to that. Sorry about that.
I guess I don't disagree with your with the overall that at some point in time we could save money or whatever. I think let's don't lose sight of what we're trying to do is put a list together to send to the commissioners right now that says if we needed projects to fund, these are the ones that we want to do. I'm not saying I don't want to do those. I'm just not sure I want to include it on the list that currently goes to the commissioners.
Dr. Shepard, if you would, could you shed some light on this?
An idea that comes to mind is that we've heard tonight we've saved $500,000 plus last year in energy cost. If you're saying we could reinvest that money and replace those light fixtures, and I think Mr. Whitkey, he can correct me next week when he's here if I'm wrong, but I think he's gone on the record in our cabinet meetings of saying that this is in 2 years would pay for itself and the third year would be a return on investment. That's the kind of thing I would like for us to consider doing with our energy savings money, in addition to returning money to the school and other things to reinvest so that we can save more. So that might be a good compromise for this.
Dave, do we have any schools on these light fixtures now?
With T5s, I
Yeah.
don't think so.
We don't have any. Maybe, we could pick a couple of the older schools and try that with the older schools, and
What
see.
was done in the Northwest? What was done in the Northwest Middle Gym? That was on last year's maintenance projects. Blake, do you know?
Well, as far as the Northwest Middle,
I thought the gym lights
I
were
don't know.
replaced last year.
we'd have to look. I don't know that it would be T5s. It might have been T8s.
Mr. Furr, you had a comment.
Should maybe take a look and see when the last time fixtures at any of these schools were changed. If it's been 5 years, or less, change them. I mean, don't change them. I mean, I think that's what you need to look at, because you look at Cox Mill High School, Cox Mill Elementary. I mean, those are new schools.
Mr. Chair, may I make a suggestion?
Yes, we need one.
Blake and I have a construction committee meeting on Thursday. Maybe we can have this conversation, have some information in this conversation Thursday with Blake and I and Lynn Wiki, and he can get us up to speed, because I'm thinking, and I'm so hoping this is correct, but Winkler should fall under the new code guides, and they should have had some of those electrical changes for light fixtures. And if not, that definitely needs to go in our construction standards, and that would be another reason for having this conversation on Thursday, if the board is good with that. Okay, that's great.
Yeah, that'd be fine with me, because it's going to the action agenda anyway, so that'll give you guys a chance to work. And also, board members, keep in mind that, with Mr. Whitkey being out, it sort of put Dave, right on the firing line right there. And he don't have all of these answers, and so you really can't expect him to have all the answers.
And he handled himself
But
very
I
well.
think he done so very well. So either way, on this one, Dave, we're going to move it to the action agenda. And then when you guys meet on this coming Thursday, then you can iron out some of these things and then bring us something back that we can move with on the 8th.
Thank you.
Okay? Now, so board, let's move on to the last item there. And this is the memorandum of understanding with Kannapolis City Schools. And Dave, if you want to go ahead on that, we'll move forward.
Sure. As this is the last item, I'll be very brief. In a nutshell, the Kannapolis Board is requesting to really be responsible for their own grounds maintenance. And that would be really at a cost figure of $77,180 per year, which is the normal amount. So they're just simply asking to have control over their own grounds maintenance.
I don't think that's no problem with me. Has anybody got any comments, concerns about that? I think that goes straight to the consent agenda. That's one less item for us to have to deal with. Okay, thank you, Dave. That's going on. And before we adjourn, I'd like to ask Dr. Shepard if he has any final comments or anything you want to say before we close out. Dr. Shepard? He's good to go. Nobody wants to talk tonight. I guess they want to go home. Okay, so board members, we've got it all finished up here, and I thank all of you for your diligence, your time, and the staff for bringing us excellent information, and it makes our job a little easier when you bring these things to us and all. But with that being said, do I have a motion that the board adjourn?
Second.
Motion second. All in favor say aye. Okay, good night to the viewing audience and all you that's here, and we'll see you back on October the 8th. Good night.